Shalom.
So,
All right. Brother Melek, as I was saying before, called me last night, said he had to be at a memorial service for, I believe, was his cousin. Someone passed away in his family, so we need to lift him up when it comes prayer time, and his family. But he asked me to fill in for him today. Once again, as usual, I don't like to step in on someone else's teaching that Abba has given them. So I will not be in Deuteronomy today. I will not be picking up where he was. We're going to go back and pick up where I left off the last time I taught Torah. So we're going to be in the 4th chapter of Genesis. So I'll give everyone a minute to get there. All right. So we're going to start off in the 4th chapter of Genesis, and if everyone would stand for the reading of the word. Yarden, would you read the 4th chapter of Genesis for us?
now the man knew Eve his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain, saying, I have gained a male child with the help of Yahweh. She then bore his brother Abel. Abel became a keeper of sheep, and Cain became a tiller of the soil. In the course of time, Cain brought an offering to Yahweh from the fruit of his soil, and Abel, for his part, brought the choicest of the firstlings for his flock. Yahweh paid heed to Abel and his offering, but to Cain and his offering he paid no heed. Cain was much distressed, and his face fell. And Yahweh said to Cain, Why are you distressed, and why is your face fallen? Surely if you do right, there is uplift. But if you do not do right, sin couches at the door. Its urge is towards you, yet you can be its master. Cain said to his brother Abel, and when they were in the field, Cain set upon his brother Abel and killed him. Yahweh said to Cain, Where is your brother Abel? And he said, I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper? Then he said, What have you done? Hark, your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. Therefore you shall be more cursed than the ground, which opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. If you till the soil, it shall no longer yield its strength to you. You shall become a ceaseless wanderer on the earth. Cain said to Yahweh, My punishment is too great to bear. Since you have banished me this day from the soil, I must avoid your presence and become a restless wanderer on the earth. Anyone who meets me may kill me. Yahweh said to him, I promise, if anyone kills Cain, sevenfold vengeance shall be taken on him. And Yahweh put a mark on Cain, lest anyone who met him should kill him. Cain left the presence of Yahweh and settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden. Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Enoch. And he then founded a city, and named the city after his son Enoch. To Enoch was born Irad, and Irad begot Mehujael, and Mehujael begot Methusael, and Methusael begot Lamech. Lamech took to himself 2 wives. The name of one was Ada, and the name of the other was Zillah. Ada bore Jabal. He was the ancestor of those who dwell in tents and amidst herds. And the name of his brother was Jubal. He was the ancestor of all who play the lyre and the pipe. As for Zillah, she bore Tubal-Cain, who forged all implements of copper and iron, and the sister of Tubal-Cain was Naamah. Lamech said to his wives, Ada and Zillah, Hear my voice, O wives of Lamech, give ear to my speech. I have slain a man for wounding me, and a lad for bruising me. Cain is avenged sevenfold, and Lamech 77-fold. Adam knew his wife again, and she bore a son and named him Seth, meaning Elohim has provided me with another offspring in place of Abel, for Cain had killed him. And to Seth, in turn, a son was born, and he named him Enosh. It was then that men began to invoke Yahweh by name.
Amen. You may be seated. The whole lot going on in this little chapter. We're going to dig into it a little bit. Looks like there's 26 verses, and we cover 3 generations. That's the interesting thing about, I never thought about it until a professor years ago in Bible college pointed out. He said, you know that over half of human history is contained in Genesis? In those 50 chapters, we cover roughly, about 2,500, 3,000 years, somewhere in there, just in this book. And yet it gets glossed over by the mainline fellowships. You go into most churches or synagogues today, and you don't hear Genesis taught as fact. And if half of human history in its most concise and straightforward explanation, if half of human history can be pushed aside, what are we going to do with the rest of the text? Think about that. Now the man, this means Adam, first ancestor, knew his wife Eve. And a lot of people read that and they say, well, of course he knew her. They were married. That's not what this word means. This is a carnal knowledge. This is very specifically a knowledge that only a husband should have for his wife. Okay? It's talking about coming together for the purpose of conceiving life. And she conceived and bore Cain. Now, this is an interesting thing in the Hebrew. How does a woman conceive a child by herself? She doesn't. It's the way the Hebrew reads. Okay? Obviously, they conceive the child together because it takes a father and a mother to conceive the child. There are actually churches out there who say that this is another quote-unquote immaculate conception, which is a totally unbiblical term anyway, that the Catholic Church came up with. But they say this is one of the immaculate conceptions. See, it says that he knew her. You know, they were friendly. Hey, I'm your husband. You're my wife. Now go over there and conceive a child without me. This gets taught in churches. Okay? And it's ridiculous. But if you understand the Hebrew context there, it says that he knew her in a carnal fashion and life was conceived within her, is what it's trying to say. Okay? She bore Cain, saying, I have gained a male child with the help of Yehovah. Now, some people read that and they say, well, she was having fertility issues. How would she have known she was having fertility issues? She was the first woman, and this was her first child. What did she have to compare it to? This isn't her saying, hey, I've been infertile and now I have a child, like with Eliana, or my daughter, whose name means my God has answered in times of trouble, because we were told that we could never have another child, and, well, here she is. This isn't that. This isn't that they have prayed 1,000 hours over Eve's womb and now she's pregnant. This is the fact that even though they had committed the first sins of humans and they had been cast out of the garden, despite that, she still understood that she relied upon the Creator for everything, including the procreation of a new generation. Something we take for granted today. There are so many children born into homes that don't want them. And and so many families who go and adopt them or try to. And we take for granted the fact that life in itself is a miracle. We should never take that for granted. There's not a child who was born whose birth was not helped along by Yehovah. She then bore his brother Abel. Now, a lot of people read this and say, okay, she bore Cain and then she bore Abel. It's the same paragraph, so they must be twins. There's actually nothing in the context that says they were twins. Okay? The fact that the 26 verses span 3 generations tell us that there could have been a great deal of time in between the 2 births. We don't know how long it was. Abel became a keeper of sheep, boy, he grew up fast, and Cain became a tiller of soil. So we see a dichotomy of where the human race is going here. Keeper of flocks, tiller of soil. In the course of time, Cain brought an offering to Yehovah from the fruit of the soil. And Abel, for his part, brought the choicest of the firstlings of the flock. Yehovah paid heed to Abel and his offering, but to Cain and his offering he paid no heed. Cain was much distressed, and his face fell. You ever know somebody whose face fell? They're suddenly very sad, and everything about their face. Okay, that's what we're talking about. And Yehovah said to Cain, before we go any farther, why was the fruit of the ground not good enough, but the fruit of the flock was? Is it because Elohim demands blood? I've heard that taught. I used to believe it. The church I was ordained in taught me that. Before I found my way out of that and into truth. It had nothing to do with him not wanting the fruit of the land. Later, we read there is a commandment to give him the fruit of the land. Portion of it. It's commanded that it be brought to the temple when it's standing, that it be given to the Levites to feed them and to be used for offerings. So why is the fruit of the land not good enough? The key here is this. If you read it, it says, Cain brought an offering to Yehovah from the fruit of the soil. And Abel, for his part, brought the choicest of the firstlings of his flock. So we have one brother who brings, it says, I got to go make an offering before the Creator. I'll take this. And we have another brother who consciously goes out among his possessions that have been entrusted to him by the Creator, and he takes the choicest of the firstlings. He takes the very best of the very first, not knowing, remember we just talked about life, every new life is a sacred blessing. He had no way of knowing that he would continue to have more animals in his flock. He didn't know what the fertility would be. He didn't know how good they would be. He didn't know if the meat would be good to eat. Actually, I need to back up and retract that. At this point, they were vegetarian. So he didn't know if the wool would be good from the lambs. He didn't know if the whatever it was that he was raising, he didn't know that he would have choicest of anything. And yet he took the choicest of the first and he gave that to Elohim. The difference between taking just whatever we have sitting around and the very best. Think about this. My wife, if I invite her on a date and I say, I'm going to take you to do something very special. I'm going to take you out to the Acropolis where we love to eat, but it's so expensive we only go there like once a year. So I'm taking you to the Acropolis, and she says, okay, and she throws on some torn up sweat clothes. Or, I'm taking you to the Acropolis, and she puts on her very best dress and does her hair up. Which one's going to be pleasing to my heart? Now, I love my wife no matter what, but if I tell her I'm doing something special for her, how am I going to hope that she reacts? I'm going to hope that she reacts by showing me that she appreciates what I'm doing for her. And that's what was going on here. Elohim had given them the entire earth. The entire world was their domain. They could take and use whatever they wanted. And one brother gives just whatever he has sitting around, and the other one gives the very best he can find. That's the lesson there. We need to come to him with the very best of all that we have. Yehovah said to Cain, "Why are you distressed? And why is your face fallen? Surely if you do right, there is uplift." In other words, this isn't the end. Correct what you did wrong. Bring me the right offering. We'll change this. I'll bless you. But if you do not do right, sin couches at the door. Means sin is sitting there waiting for him to keep on doing wrong. Its urge is toward you, yet you can be its master. This is an interesting play on words here, because in the previous chapter, we talked about the desire that the woman would have for her husband. And I said people think that's a carnal desire, and it's not. That's not what that word means. It's the exact same word that's translated here to urge, and it means she would desire his place. She would desire to overcome him. And the picture, the word there in Hebrew is a word picture that is similar to the word flood. That it would overwhelm him, or that she would overwhelm her husband and try to take his authority over the household, or that sin would overwhelm their son. Okay. He said, but yet you can be its master. And that is the promise that we have today. We can master sin. None of us can be perfect, but we can live a righteous life. Cain said to his brother Abel, ... Isn't that interesting? You're reading the JPS. Cain said to his brother Abel, ... And a lot of translations will say, let's go out into the field. Or there's different translations for a passage there. That the JPS scholars is one of the few places where they are just absolutely split down the middle over whether or not that verse is supposed to be there, because it's in so many ancient texts and it's not in so many ancient texts. All we really know is that he said something to him. Okay? Cain spoke to his brother Abel, and it may well have been, let's go out into the field. And when they were in the field, Cain set upon his brother Abel and killed him. First murder. Yehovah said to Cain, where is your brother Abel? And he said, I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper? Isn't that the question that we ask ourselves all the time? Do I really need to do this to help this person? Am I his keeper? That question has echoed down through history for 6,000 years almost. It has echoed in the heart of every man and every woman. Do I really need to take care of this person? I don't owe them anything. Not only do I not owe them, they've hurt me. Later in Torah, and then Mashiach repeats it, he says, love your neighbor as yourself. Would you help yourself out of that situation? Well, yes, I would. Well, then help them. If you were hungry like that person, would you feed yourself? Yes, well, then feed them. If You were destitute. Would you find a way to give yourself a place to live if you could? Yes. Well, then give that person a place to live. Am I my brother's keeper? In a large great manner, the essence of the rest of Scripture is the answer. Yes. Yes, Cain, you are your brother's keeper. Then he said, what have you done? Hark, listen. Your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. You know, I used to think this was just an analogy type of thing, okay? Some of you have seen the studies I forwarded. I used to think that this was just a poetic way of saying, I saw what you did, Cain. But in recent years, there have been studies where they've used, I forget the name of the medical machine, but it's a very, very carefully set microphone, basically is what it comes up down to. And they have actually listened to cells die. And when, say, like a skin cell or something like that dies, it comes out, it's kind of like a crackling sound, and it kind of breaks down. You can hear it slowly, like it's deteriorating, like you would expect. But when you listen with that special microphone, that special device, and you listen to the sound of blood cells dying, it sounds like a little baby screaming. Literally, I believe, Elohim was saying, I hear his blood dying in the earth. I hear it crying out to me like my child that he was. Therefore you shall be more cursed than the ground which opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. It's a lot of cursing. A few weeks ago, I got in another debate. I know I'm surprised that you have getting debates about theology. Got in another debate with a chaplain over a correction center. He said, you need to stop telling people that God's all about cursing. I said, I don't say he's about cursing. I say he's about blessings and cursing. So we choose what we get. We're only on chapter 4 of Genesis. How many curses have we seen? If you till the soil, it shall no longer yield its strength to you. You shall become a ceaseless wanderer on earth. You're never going to have a home. Interesting thing about Beit Av, Jewish concept, the home of the Father. Because the home of the Father is always where the children feel at home. It doesn't matter how old they get. It doesn't matter if they travel the world. It doesn't matter if they get married and have children. The home of the Father in a healthy family is where those children still call home. If you listen to my mother and her siblings, they still, all these years after my grandfather passed away, they still call the farm where he grew up, which was his grandfather's farm, home. My mother will tell my stepfather, I'm running down home, I got to get something out of the barn. It's in another county. It's not where they live. But in her heart, it will always be home, and that's a beautiful thing. Spiritually, Beit Av is coming home to the Father and coming home to the fellowship. And if we cut ourselves off from the fellowship, as he cut himself off from his brother by committing murder, Beit Av no longer belongs to us. I don't know how many people have told me, well, I want to live a righteous and spiritual life, but I don't want to go to synagogue because there's hypocrites there. Well, if you come, there'll be one more. I don't want to go down there because somebody broke the lamp in 1970, whatever it was. 72. He raised his fingers up. It's 1972. We actually know a fellowship that has split over that. I have seen fellowships split because they couldn't agree on what color the carpet should be in the new sanctuary, or which way to run the basketball courts in the gym. It's a house of worship. Why do you need a gym with basketball courts? So that's what they split their congregation over. Beit Av does not belong to them. They've cut themselves off from fellowship. Cain said to Yehovah, my punishment is too great to bear, since you have banished me this day from the soil, and I must avoid your presence and become a restless wanderer on earth. Anyone who meets me may kill me. Now this is where we begin to get into some interesting things. So we had Adam, we had Eve, we had Cain, we had Abel. Cain killed Abel. And he says, but if I go out wandering on the earth, anybody who sees me is going to kill me. And this is where skeptics get really, really nitpicky and say, who's going to kill him? Obviously, Adam and Eve weren't the first people on earth. It must have been multiple creations. He must have created white people over here. And of course, that was Adam and Eve. Or black people over here, and they had some other names. Or some people say Cain was the first black person. I don't know where they get that, if his parents were the first white people. None of that is biblical, of course. But we hear that. I've heard that argued in so-called Christian churches over and over and over again. So who was going to kill him? Well, you see, there's this little, almost footnote in the middle of the scripture that says, and Adam and Eve had other sons and daughters. Now, to me, if I just killed my brother and I go wandering out on the earth, and there's not a whole lot of people left on the earth, and actually nobody by name is reported except my parents, who do you think is most likely going to want to take revenge for the death of my brother that I killed? Some stranger from another creation? Hey, I just wandered into Asia, and I am the first white guy. I'm the son of the first white guy, and I killed the other first white guy. Another son of the first white guy. But that's okay. I'm going to be asking all you guys. Are any of them going to want to take revenge? No. Who would want to take revenge? I'll tell you who. The other brothers. Okay, we see it with Yaakov. We see it with Yaakov, and he tells his sons, let this all be. And what do? They don't just go up and go after the guy that took advantage of their sister. They kill off his entire city for revenge. Makes a whole lot more sense than some stranger doing it. Yehovah said to him, I promise, if anyone kills Cain, 7-fold vengeance shall be taken on him. You know what that means? It means somewhere in between, he killed him, and he said, am I my brother's keeper? Somewhere in there, he repented, and he is once again able to come to Beit Av. And Elohim says, you know what? I still have to punish you for what you did. But you are my child. I love you. And although I'm punishing you for what you did, nobody else has the right to punish you for what you did. And Yehovah put a mark on Cain. This is where those churches say, see, he was marked, he made his skin black. He was no longer one of the good white people. It's not what it says, folks. He put a mark on Cain, lest anyone who met him should kill him. Cain left the presence of Yehovah and settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden. Cain knew his wife. Here he goes, greeting her again, just like his father did his mother. Now she's going to go off and have a kid by herself. This chapter's full of that. Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Enoch. Now, clarity here. This is not Enoch, Book of Enoch. This is not Enoch translated into the heavenlies. Enoch. This is an ancestor. Okay. And he then founded a city and named the city after his son Enoch. So to Enoch was born Irad, and Irad begat Mehujael, and Mehujael begat Methusael, and Methusael begat Lamech, and Lamech took to himself 2 wives. Oh boy, there's going to be trouble. I've had it asked to me, doesn't the Bible say you can have more than one wife if you can support them? And I say, well, yes, it does. It says a couple other things about that. It says, obey the law of the land, and the law of the land here says we're on to have one. It also says, if you read through the stories and look at the examples, there is not one case in all of Scripture where a man had 2 wives and it worked out well for him. Or 3. Or 4. Now, if one dies and you remarry, that's different. But just because something is permissible in Torah does not mean that it's good for people. Okay, if you choose to live in a culture where, the laws allow you to have more than one wife and you want to do that, more power to you. Don't come to me with your headaches because you asked for them. The name of the one was Ada, and the name of the other was Zillah. Ada bore Jabal. He was the ancestor of those who dwell in tents and amidst herds. And the name of his brother was Jubal. He was the ancestor of all who play the lyre and the pipe. So we have herdsmen and we have musicians. Now, does that mean that every herdsman in the world is literally descended from one brother and every musician from the other? No. But this was early on enough in history, I guess that could be possible. But that's not what it's saying. It's saying this is talking about a generational knowledge. This is talking about these were the men who began to teach other people in the younger generations how to keep herds and how to make music. As for Zillah, she bore Tubal-Cain, who forged all implements of copper and iron, and the sister of Tubal-Cain was Naamah. And Lamech said to his wife, Ada and Zillah, hear my voice. Notice whose voice it says it is. It doesn't say, hear the voice of the Creator. He says, hear my voice. This is a red flag. When the husband says, hear my voice, not, I've been praying and Elohim has been showing me some things. When he says, hear my voice, you already know he's off track. Because what he should want his wife, or wives in this case, to hear is the voice of our Creator speaking through him. O wives of Lamech, give ear to my speech. So here's the man, the first man in history to have 2 wives. One was not enough for him. That's greedy. And now he wants them to listen to him and not the Creator. I have slain a man for wounding me, and a lad for bruising me. If Cain is avenged 7-fold, then Lamech 77-fold. Does anyone see any place in here where it says that Elohim actually honored that. No. He's speaking his own will. And you see what immediately happens? Adam knew his wife again. We see that over and over in Scripture. People get pompous, they get arrogant, and suddenly they're just kind of written out of the story. Not even an explanation. Not even like the old soap opera, oh, he went into a coma, but he'll be back next season. Okay? Not, oh, he died. And the next season, his wife wakes up and the whole thing was a dream. No, he just disappears. He's gone. There's never another mention of him in Scripture for anything he did. Adam knew his wife again, and she bore a son and named him Seth, meaning God has provided, Elohim has provided me with another offspring in place of Abel. Okay, so she had lost Abel and she had lost Cain. Abel because he was murdered, Cain because he was made to leave. But she's given Seth. It says, for Cain had killed him, and to Seth in turn a son was born, and he named him Enosh. It was then that men began to invoke Yehovah by name. Okay? So Seth is born long after, we don't know how long after, but long after Cain kills Abel. They have another son. He grows up and has a son. So we're now well into the third generation. The early third generation is already having the fourth and fifth generation. And then they began to call Yehovah by name. Now, a lot of times we talk about the giving of the sacred name at Mount Sinai. We talk about, it was the first time I hear this all the time, it was the first time God gave his name to the Jewish people. Well, there were no Jewish people at the time. That hadn't happened yet. But it's not the first time that his name was given. The first time his name was called upon in invocation on a regular basis happened sometime around the birth of Enosh, fourth generation, third from Adam. Does anybody have any questions? Is this going to be important that we follow this line of Seth as we go through any other time that Melech is unable to preach? Anytime I'm going to be going back to Genesis and we'll be following that line of Seth all the way through. Yes?
Okay. I know it's not in Scripture, but I haven't read it all the way through. I'm doing just kind of a study, there's like a big reading off, but it's the book of Jasher, how you say it. One of the things it says in the book is that this Lamech guard, I can't remember the guy's name, but he was I think it said, I remember it was Nimrod or the son of Nimrod, that he actually wounded Lamech, and that Lamech killed him. Have you ever heard that? Or
Never heard of it.
What do you think of that?
I know that at this time Nimrod was not around. There were several generations. Okay. Now, people lived a great deal longer at that time, so I'm not saying it's impossible, but there's nothing in Scripture that points to that.
It might have been different. It was the king of the Chaldean Empire. I don't know, was that around? Yeah, at least if it wasn't Nimrod.
I don't think Chaldeans were around yet. No, they couldn't have been. None of that came until after the flood.
And there was only one city.
Yeah, you talk about the kings of Chaldeans. The Chaldean Empire didn't happen, and Nimrod lived immediately after the flood. He was the first king after the flood.
Okay.
Yes.
No, people are like, Adam and Eve were the first white people.
Honey, I was joking. People say that, but that is not true. They were probably more like middle brown.
I know, but Mom says that people can't marry each other because of their skin.
Yes.
The Lamech is the seventh generation, so like first.
Oh, did that count? Oh, well, I'm talking about Seth and Enoch. I'm not talking about Lamech.
I'm saying like that line stops with Lamech. It just stops. Alright, so he would have been the fifth generation from Cain. First, no, stop. Fifth generation. The second after the third generation is the second question is, the end of this chapter is one of the very few times I can think of that it directly says the Father named the Son. Going to chapter 30, Jacob's wives, all named their sons. Is that a Jewish tradition? Or is that should be Hebraic tradition?
I think in certain sects of Judaism it is, but I can't really comment on that. I don't know enough about it to really give you an answer on that. Yes.
Okay, so some of the book of Yashar, and it is mentioned in, I think, what, First or Second Chronicles, 2 or 3 places. The one that I read, if it's not accurate, which maybe parts of it are, parts of it aren't, is there another book somewhere that somebody, I mean, like, scholars know about?
That's one. The book of Enoch, I've done a thorough study on. The book of Yashar,
I don't know if anybody knows what it is or what.
I wish I could tell you.
Yeah. Because I know it has a lot of history. The one I was reading has a lot of history.
Somebody else?